What's up, everybody? Welcome back to MedicalSalesU. I'm Dave Sterrett, and today we are counting down the top 7 highest paid jobs in pharmaceutical sales. I want to give you real numbers and the honest truth about what it takes to get into each one. But before we get into it, here's what most people get wrong. The numbers that you see on the job boards, they dramatically undercount what top earners are actually taking home. Okay, so total compensation, it means your base salary plus quarterly bonus. Sometimes you get stock, your RSUs, that might be like restricted stock units. You get a car allowance, you get great benefits. Now, we're not going to add up, of course, your car allowance and all those things, but you got to keep in mind your base, your sign-on bonus. And when you add all that up, the benefits in pharmaceutical sales, you can make a lot of money. Now, I've lived these numbers. When I first started out, I was in the diagnostic space, okay? I was testing for sleep apnea. Then I moved to a large company, Foundation Medicine, that was a part of Roche, that had great benefits. It helped my overall pay almost double. And even more than that, because I had great benefits. I had RSUs. I had matching 401k. That's the advantage about going with one of these large companies. Now, also our members, and I will just say this, we've said it before, the lowest that one of our members at MedicalSalesU, who has broken in the lowest base pay, is $95,000. Now, a lot of them, they've broken in, they've had a base pay at like $140,000, their first job, their very first job. And on top of that, they're making commission. But I would say most of them are probably, if they're breaking into a large pharmaceutical company, they're calling on primary care. Okay, that's your general doctors that kind of treat everything, your family doctors, internal medicine. And often the base pay is like $115,000, but company car, quarterly bonus, matching 401k. But if you do well on that, then you can break into specialty pharmaceutical sales. Okay, and the reason I do this is because a lot of those other coaches out there say, well, look, we have people leave pharma and then go into device and they're making a lot more. True. However, a lot of people who break into device, they break into that associate role. And I want to give the top 7 highest paid jobs in pharmaceutical sales in the specialty, because not all specialties pay the same. Now, this differs on companies, right? It differs on what the product is, okay? Now, we have guests on our show. People are connecting with me all the time. People are breaking into our program, people that are reinventing themselves. I've had people who were in device want to get into specialty pharma, reinvent themselves, and they've often come in at a high base, 150, even as high as a base of like $200,000, first pharma job. Now they had medical sales experience, right? But they've reinvented themselves into kind of a new area. So let's count the top 7. Number 7 is dermatology. And this would include biologic sales. Now, derm is so broad, but the total compensation is around $140,000 to $230,000. Derm can be very broad. It can include aesthetics, right? But I want to focus a little bit on dermatology biologics. It's one of the best kept secrets in specialty pharma. You're selling the high-end biologic medications, drugs made from living cells rather than chemicals. And these are for like conditions like psoriasis and eczema. And these medications can cost a lot of money, like $20,000 to $80,000 per patient per year. Of course, we're thankful for the payers, for insurances that cover the cost of these drugs. Your customers are dermatologists and immunologists at your major academic medical centers and large healthcare systems. Now, sometimes it will be your local dermatologist as well. And what I like about derm is when I started with Sanofi, I sold a drug that had multiple indications. They sold that division to Regeneron, but it had indications for lung, but also in derm. And what I realized is that the access is better in derm than a lot of other areas. Definitely better than oncology. These doctors will come and see you. There's always something new in derm. They're treating, anything from like acne to skin cancer. There's the aesthetic side. And so for someone who's coming out of primary care pharma, this is your most realistic entry point into specialty. There's strong compensation. There's a great lifestyle. You're not working weekends unless there's like a specialty, like a special conference or something like that. But doctors are often willing to try something new. And you can schedule your in-services. That means like your breakfast or your lunch, you stop by and you educate about this new opportunity. Okay, coming in at number 6 is cardiology and your GLP-1 metabolic sales specialist. Now, we've had people in our program with no pharma sales experience break in here at number 6. Your total compensation is $155,000 to $250,000. I just talked to one of our members, a pharmacist who says, and he broke in at one of these large companies. He broke in at Eli Lilly, and he says that he's making so much more as a pharmacist at Eli Lilly than he did as a pharmacist selling one of these drugs. Also, I had a nurse who was, he broke in at Pfizer, and he's making substantially more selling in this space here. So there's a lot of these GLP-1. There's, of course, you think about Ozempic and Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound. There's a lot in this space, and it's a great way for you to break in to specialty pharmaceutical sales. Because if you're in this position, you're not just calling on primary care, but you might start calling on endocrinologists or cardiologists. And of course, when we talk about calling on, that means you're selling to. These are often obesity specialists. And it can include your major academic institutions, your Cleveland Clinic, your Mayo Clinic. But then also your family doctors as well, who will prescribe these medications. So these drugs have now demonstrated cardiovascular benefits. They're moving beyond just weight loss, and the FDA has multiple approvals. So this might be a great way for some of you who want to get into pharmaceutical sales, is to sell one of these drugs. Because now you're addressing things like cholesterol. It could be things you could get into cardiovascular. You could sell, things like blood thinners. There's always new innovation in this space as well, and they do pay well. And this is an excellent way for you to break into pharmaceutical sales. Coming in at number 5 is neuroscience and CNS sales specialist. The total compensation is $175,000 to $250,000. Almost nobody in career coaching is talking about neuroscience sales in pharma. And I think it's a really good way to break in. CNS, the central nervous system, is one of the most intellectually demanding and highest paid careers in all pharmaceutical sales. So you're selling treatments for things like multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, epilepsy, migraine, Alzheimer's, right? So it will be specialists like neurologists, psychiatrists, and you will start calling on your academic institutions like Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic. And just think about what city you live in. You're now calling on specialists. And so these are very rigorous physicians. They will get into the science. You will have to understand the clinical trial. And so when you're interviewing for one of these positions, make sure that you study up on what was the clinical trial to help with that FDA approval. So you will get into one of these roles and you will start building trust with someone like a neurologist, and they trust you. And if they trust the science and trust you, you can have a great partnership with that account. And then when there's a new breakthrough, say in Alzheimer's or MS or migraine, they will listen to you because you've built trust. Coming in at number 4 is rare disease key account specialist. The total compensation can be $180,000 to $300,000. We've had people in our program break in with a base of around $200,000. In rare disease, you might have, just a handful of patients that actually have this disease. When Sanofi sold Libtayo to Regeneron. I was left without a job. I applied internally and actually got a position that was a promotion. It was a senior national role. And one of the products that I sold was called Enjaymo. And this, of course, this was the first company that I went to in pharma. I was in diagnostics with Foundation Medicine. But now it was for a disease called cold agglutinin disease. Now, I didn't know anything about it. They trained me. And however, I had to do a little bit of research. But again, I was speaking to specialists, hematologists, who really focus on not just hematology, but a subset of benign hematology. It's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack. And so your job as a rep is going after the one and helping those physicians to recognize the one, to have an understanding of that disease. And so they may bring you on as a rep even before the FDA approval. And you're now providing education about that disease state. These doctors who've treated everything, they're like, oh yeah, I had one patient who had that. It's really rare. There hasn't been any treatment for that. And guess what? You get to be the one to introduce this new treatment that's going to help these patients, even if it's just a few, okay? And so you also will be calling on the specialists, the academic. So if you're in Ohio, that would be Ohio State. It would be Cleveland Clinic, right? I was in Texas, right? That would include, MD Anderson, UT Southwestern, the academics, those who specialize in rare disease. Now, these drugs are very expensive. They can cost anywhere to like $100,000 to over $1 million per patient per year. However, before you get all anti-pharma, there are all these programs that will often cover the cost. The patient will not be stuck with those type of bills. Okay, so keep that in mind. Insurances cover these, and then there's all these programs that come alongside to make sure that these patients are not stuck with those high bills. So let's move on to the next. Coming in at number 3 is biotech specialty sales. Gene therapy, this can include cell therapy, total compensation, anywhere from $200,000 to $320,000. Of course, top performers will make more than that. But number 3 is where we enter a different conversation about what pharmaceutical sales can actually be. Gene therapy, cell therapy, CAR T, RNA therapeutics. These are some of the most revolutionary medical treatments in human history. And you're selling these treatments that in some cases represents a one-time cure for diseases that were previously untreatable. You're giving hope. A single infusion that corrects a genetic defect. A cell-based therapy that reprograms a patient's own immune system to attack cancer. So there is some overlap in this oncology space, but you will be calling on your Memorial Sloan, City of Hope, MD Anderson. These are physicians that are simultaneously treating patients. They're often publishing, doing research, and it's a very exciting space to be in. Then keep in mind these companies that will hire you, you have great benefits, a great work-life balance. It's working more of an 8 to 5. Sometimes your territory might be a little bit larger, and you might have to travel a little bit overnight with these positions, but it just depends on the division and the company. But this is a great space, and that brings us to number 2. Number 2, oncology sales specialists. Think about your large pharmaceutical companies. Just do a Google search on your top 10 largest pharmaceutical companies. The total compensation is anywhere from like $200,000 to $315,000. I know some reps will say, I've made $350,000. Yes, you're a top performer. But oncology at large pharmaceutical companies is very demanding. Access is going to be difficult. You will have to be creative. You will have to collaborate with your colleagues. That might be your CAM, your key account manager, your field reimbursement manager. And you will have to think creatively to build trust with these oncologists. Your call points will be split between both your academics, again, that's your Duke, your Chapel Hill, and also your local community oncologist. Your local community oncologist will treat everything. And keep in mind, this is why I'm so passionate about this area, is when I broke into my first pharmaceutical sales job after being in diagnostics, it was at Santa Fe. My base was 165, but I felt like I was given hope to an area of cancer patients where previously there was not hope. My base at that very first job was 165. It kept growing. I kept getting better. I never made under $200,000, and I just kept growing and improving. But most importantly, I felt like in the community accounts that these were doctors who had, they had been introduced to so many different treatments, and they were eager to learn and understand it if there was something new, something that could give their patients hope, that could add time. Think about that. If you could add another year to this patient's life, another 2 year, another 3, 4 years. Think about that. That's 4 graduations. That's another grandchild that they get to know. And so this is a very rewarding career. And I just highly recommend large pharmaceutical companies. The reason I recommend this, and the reason this comes in at number 2, is you will have a high base salary. If you have years of experience, your base salary will come in at $200,000 plus. You will get paid very well if you have years of experience. And keep in mind that the FDA in pharma gives more approvals to cancer than any other specialty. There's a lot of passion behind cancer because some of you've had someone that you've loved who's been impacted by cancer. It's likely that some of you who are listening maybe did a 5K or a fundraiser to bring awareness. We just had a walk here in Columbus over the weekend to bring awareness to Purple Stripe, to bring awareness to pancreatic cancer, right? Some of you have participated in causes to bring awareness. Like I did a Pelotonia here in Columbus, Ohio, to raise funds for cancer innovation. And so keep in mind, it's not just your base, but you also have a quarterly bonus and you're giving hope. And so I highly recommend that some of you consider moving in to oncology. We have people who reach out to MedicalSalesU who have years of experience and they want to reinvent themselves. And through our program, we mentor and coach how to interview well so that when you're going up against people who have sales experience in this area, you stand out. We've had people break in without sales experience from a clinical background, break in into oncology, maybe some in sales, but also other roles like nurse educator roles. So there's multiple paths that you can take to make a difference in the lives of cancer patients. Coming in at number 1 is Oncology Biotech Startup Sales Specialist. Total compensation, $240,000 to $350,000. There's no ceiling. The undisputed king of pharmaceutical sales compensation is an oncology biotech startup that you trust, not one of these scams. When I say that there's no ceiling, I'm not exaggerating because the reps who get into the right oncology biotech companies early, they earn the trust at these academic institutions and they can stay at that company a few years and be very successful. And then that company is acquired. I know these reps who are millionaires. And it's not because of their base salary. It's because of equity. You will often get equity as you sign on to this. When a small biotech oncology company gets acquired by one of the major pharmaceutical companies, which happens constantly, the acquisition premium can be 1.5 to 2 times the stock price. And then you have the opportunity to even buy more stock. And so if you've been accumulating equity, there's going to be a great return when that company is acquired. And if you are successful at one of the large pharmaceutical companies, these other biotech startups will come after you. I have them come after me, recruiters do. And when I've been, listening to them, they're telling me that just the base alone is 215 to 230. Sometimes the base can be even higher than 230. But this is a strong base, but then you get equity, you get stock when you come on. And this is very exciting because a lot of people want to know, a lot of these doctors, they're curious about what is new. When you go to the large cancer conference in Chicago, ASCO, it's not just the large pharmaceutical companies, the big ones that are announcing the breakthroughs. Sometimes it's these biotech startups, and there's a lot of excitement. Now, they will likely get acquired along the way. They will get acquired by one of the large companies that can expand the sales force and expand the product. But once you are successful at a large pharmaceutical company, you will then be recruited by biotech startups. It happens to me frequently. There is a little bit of a gamble, a little bit of a risk. You go to work for one of your large pharma companies, there's a lot of stability there. And these biotech startups will come after you and recruit you sometimes before the FDA approval. And you have to weigh the costs because these larger pharma companies will give things, you won't get paid quite as much, but they'll give you a pension. And there'll be the idea that you have stability at that large pharma company that you may not have at a biotech. So you have to look at the evidence. You have to be very familiar with the clinical trial, look at the leadership, where have they been before, and what is their history of being acquired, and what is the data circulating, what you know about the product already and their portfolio about what's coming next. Here's something that most people in the industry do not know. And it's the stat that explains everything about why oncology biotech is number one on the list. There was a peer-reviewed study covering every first-in-class cancer drug approved by the FDA over a 10-year period. And it broke down exactly where the breakthrough oncology drugs actually came from. Small biotech companies originated 46%, academic research 14%, and large pharmaceutical companies that a lot of people assume are driving all the innovation, they were only at 14%. So nearly half of every truly groundbreaking cancer drug born in this country came out of a small biotech. Another chunk came out of university research labs. So the big guys, the big pharma, are largely acquiring and commercializing innovation that someone else created. The FDA is approving more in oncology than any sphere. More than 60 oncology approvals by the FDA per year, with over 380 additional label expansions added on top of brand new drug approvals in the last decade. There's a lot of changes that are taking place in oncology, and that means new launches, new hiring, new territory build-outs that are happening in oncology constantly, every single year. The opportunity in this space does not slow down. So biotech startups are the ones who may initially launch the drug, and then there's an acquisition. Maybe it happens even before the product is launched. But it's very exciting for those who have been part of these launches and to get in very early. In our program at MedicalSalesU, maybe that's you. Maybe you have been a pharma rep. You've been working for a large company, and you want to try something new. I can help guide you in this process. We have real conversations. There's a lot of opportunity, a lot of excitement in this space, in cancer, and I highly recommend it. In MedicalSalesU, we are helping those who are breaking into the industry brand new, but once you're in, don't stay stagnant. I have a lot of people who feel like they've been stagnant. They've relied on their same relationships, their same methodology of applying to jobs, and they get stuck in pharma. And then they tell people, pharma is not that good. Well, maybe you're just stuck. Maybe you need a fresh start. In MedicalSalesU, we want to help you step by step. It's not just helping you break in. That's part of what we do. But we want to help you to build a career that goes somewhere extraordinary. We want your career to be something that you're passionate about, making a difference in the lives of patients. If what I'm saying is helpful to you, I want you to press subscribe. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. And also just make a comment. We want to interact with you. Also, if you want to connect with me, add me also on LinkedIn. Some of you may want to join our program at MedicalSalesU. I'm Dave Sterrett. Keep building, keep growing, and thanks for joining MedicalSalesU. If you're trying to break into medical device or pharmaceutical sales, or maybe you're ready to reinvent yourself into a new specialty like oncology, our program, MedicalSalesU, can help.
I'm extremely grateful for Dave Sterrett and his program, MedicalSalesU.
I'm now making $60,000 more than I was as a pharmacist.
I highly recommend the program. I just landed an incredible dream job.
Our members come from every background: nurses, pharmacists, teachers, athletes, and they're breaking in fast, averaging $151,875 in 11 and a half weeks. Many are earning over $200K. The industry is changing lives. You can change lives. Check us out, MedicalSalesU. Invest in yourself, and let's get you in the game.